Welcome to Disruptive Successor, a show for next generation leaders in family businesses and entrepreneurs who want to disrupt the status quo and take their existing business to a whole new level. We all know that what got us here isn't going to get us there. This show will provide inspiration, advice, and resources to help you create massive impact. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session.
Just really can't impress enough on folks how important it is to learn what others have done. And one of the things that when I have a chance to go to work or talk to other people is, for our experience, where we landed on, say, our employment policy or our governance model, whatever else, is really not as important, in my opinion, to other people as the process, as going through the process as an ownership group, with or without management, intergeneration or not, whatever your dynamics are, going through that process as a group is, to me, more important than whether you land on you have to work outside of the business for 2 years or 5 years, or you don't, or you need a degree or you don't, kind of thing, or you're going to, whatever kind of business you're going to be. So working with advisors and getting out there and learning what other families are doing is really, really critical.
When I came back, here's what I noticed almost immediately. So my dad he had a good niche, and he commanded good prices, and he made a lot of money. And what I started to notice was we were getting lots of inquiries. We weren't winning business. And I started to look at his pricing and what he was doing. And I said to myself, I need enough cash to survive. And I don't necessarily need high margins, I need cash. And so the first thing I did, and I'll be honest with you, I've repeated this 2 or 3 times during my career when things have started to go, the wrong way. And that is lower my margin and win business.
My introduction always is, hey guys, my name is Arya, father of 2 girls, 6 dogs, husband to a superwoman, a streetcar racer turned hotelier, now social media marketer and founder of Internet Moguls. People clap and they, oh my God, what a sweet guy. He talks about his wife, he talks about his kids and his dog. Oh my God, he's such a nice guy. But I felt fake for the very first time, because this was the third time that I delayed my plans to go back to Vancouver, where my wife and kids are, just because one event after the other. And I was like, I'm saying father of 2 girls, 6 dogs, but where the hell am I? I'm not with my wife. I'm not with my kids. And then there was a conference, social media conference in San Diego. There were 5,000 people there. I wanted to meet an influencer, and it just happened that he invited me to an after party. I was like, I've been wanting to meet you for so many years. And the first question he asked me was, how's the family? I said, family's good. He said, who all do you have at work? I had family. I said, Raya and Abhiyan, my kids. How old is Raya? 13. He said, oh, so you have 5 summers with her. So what happened in Bangalore and then what happened in this was like, oh my God, I felt fake. I felt guilty. I felt all of a sudden, all this happiness because of the success that I got felt diluted.
I remember a fun Sunday for me would be to wake up early and go to Waffle House, go to church, and then go to the office because nobody's at the office. And I could play my music as loud as I want and get a start on the week ahead. But yes,
yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and that's not most employees' idea of fun, is
right
to go to the office on the weekend and work when no one else is there.
It's true. I thought about another experience that was real helpful for me. In starting the business, we had a cranky old sales director who was, he served in the Vietnam War. He was real old school. And my dad had me report to him for a while, and he could give me feedback and direction in a way that my father probably couldn't, just because of our close relationship. And that was so helpful to me. And I learned so much from this guy. about sales and working with customers and things like that. It was really great. So I'm thankful for that experience.
You got to get your hands around the financials of not only the business, but I'd say don't think of it as family business, but think of it as kind of family enterprise. So whole family enchilada, so to speak. Mm-hmm. You got to understand, what the finances are and what the interplay is between all of that. So that could be an accountant. If they've got a big picture view, it could be a financial planner, it could be a combination of those two. At some point, you're probably going to need some legal help, certainly on the estate planning side, if that's where you need to kind of draw up some things. But you may just need a good business lawyer if you're looking at, shareholder agreements or buy-sell agreements or pieces of that. I think if you're wrestling with business issues, like specifically business issues, you're going to want somebody, maybe like in your shoes that can help on the business consulting side. And then, if it's a family business or founder-led business, you're probably, you're talking about succession. You're going to want somebody who's has some practice kind of going through that.
You had someone who always was maybe a good financial manager.
Yeah, in the very beginning, I was attempting to do the bookkeeping.
Oh boy.
Myself. That was rough. That lasted about a year and a half. I got introduced to a bookkeeper who is still with us today.
Right.
And she is great. That was one of the first things that I guess I outsourced or hired out.
That was smart.
I look back on that time during my high school summers and my college summers, and then in my early professional years, really having the opportunity to touch many different aspects, from the operations side, which is where we roast and package the coffee, to the logistics and the supply chain side, making sure the deliveries from our Birmingham production center make it to our field sales. And then most importantly, and this was something that my uncle really took strong emphasis to, and that was being engaged with the direct relationship with our customers. And so I remember vividly running multiple coffee routes where I would start my mornings early and be at the customer's site very early in the morning and having that direct contact with our customers, both in Birmingham and Atlanta, as well as other parts of the country. So I credit my uncle with a lot of, wise decisions in terms of emphasizing the value of customer relationships and knowing the customer firsthand.
Fortunately, given our size and the fact that we're blessed to have a lot of requests, we have to limit it because it's just not, so that immediately is a red flag to us. If it's like, if somebody's and it's, especially if it's like, and I understand some of these folks get so big they need to have someone managing them, but if you're being reached out on behalf of somebody and all it is their card with their rates, like we know that's probably not going to be a long-term relationship. But if it's somebody like, oh my gosh, I'm redoing my little girl's room, I love your system, I've used the best is this, and and it's funny because some of the biggest accounts, this is how they start, which you wouldn't think, but I've already bought your stuff on Amazon, I've loved it for years, I want to do my little girl's room and set up like a at-home learning station or remote learning. Would you want to partner up with some product? Like that's a yes, and that's a how can. That makes us want to figure out how we can support them even more.
Look, at the end of the day, we all show up every single day, and so does our team. And, there's times where things, someone might be having a slow day or a slow week, or they might have some personal problems that ultimately are reflecting in the business. And that's another big thing, like I've learned that, in most key areas where businesses aren't performing or in certain departments, is that when you really get to the core of it, sometimes, it's a case of where, it's really people's personal problems reflecting in the business. It's not an actual business problem. So it's having the empathy to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and understand that there is something at the core here, and it doesn't necessarily have to be operational, or it doesn't necessarily have to be a product of the person not being able to do the role. It could be something just inside of their personal life that's reflecting in the business. So those, to me, communication and empathy are two big things.
A key moment that stands out in my mind, and something that I continue to revisit on probably a quarterly basis, is an activity called Vital Few, Trivial Many. And so inside this activity or exercise, I was asked to make a list, 20 different functions within the company that I was responsible for. And I remember laughing a little bit as I was asked to put 20, because I was thinking, well, I probably have 40 or even more. But I put down the most important 20 at that time. We identified the ones that I enjoyed the most, I felt like I was the best at, I could do for hours on end and not realize any time had gone by. And we moved those down to the vital few. I think there were 5.
Yep.
The remaining 15, we slid over into a trivial mini column, and we eliminated, downgraded, outsourced. We went and we found a new home for those remaining 15. And I still was not bought in at that moment. I just recall laughing, thinking, yeah, I'll give this a try. I'm a bit desperate at the moment, but this is going to implode and it will circle back and become just a big bomb sitting on my desk. But I was wrong. And within 2 weeks and I really truly was committed to this exercise. Within 2 weeks, I immediately started seeing the impact in a lot of different areas: the power of outsourcing, the power of delegating, the power of eliminating some of these trivial things that didn't turn out to be all that important anyways.
In my master's program, I spent a lot of time studying different forms of leadership, and some work for certain people. I'm sure that I could force myself to be a dictator. I'm not. He was a little bit more of that, although he's a definite people person. And so his dictatorship still worked in that relationship value. I'm more of like a systems thinking, higher horizontal leader. I want everybody to be contributing and, in a cyclical way where we're feeding in other groups and we're kind of coming back around. So people have opportunity to move, they can learn things, there's options, whereas it's not my way is the highway. So that's kind of a little bit older way of thinking, I'd say, or a more traditional way of thinking.
I really wanted to push and start growing the company. With that, I had a very eye-opening experience that a lot of my resistance was me. I needed to change. I was the first thing that needed work before the company could even go anywhere. So with that, I learned that I had to change a lot of my habits, change a lot of my physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and financial health. With that, I was able to pinpoint a couple areas that were really holding me back. Diet. I have always been a very active person, very physically fit person. And I noticed myself being 230 pounds instead of 175. And I was like, whoa, what happened there? Drinking was another big one for me. The beers at the end of the day, and that was just a distraction. So 2018 time period, I made a commitment. At this point, I was a father of 2 children, a husband, and a business owner. I had a lot of people that I was supporting, and I realized that I needed to make a change myself to make sure that I could give everybody that I was surrounded with what I want from myself.
So I think true vulnerability and sharing, like being the first person to raise your hand when you're like, hey, like mentally, I'm off, guys. Like, I don't know what it is, but I'm a little off. I feel a little overwhelmed, and I'm not totally, sure about what we're doing or where we're going, and I need some help, rather than having those same emotions and same feelings and then masking them with positivity 100% of the time. You've got to do a certain amount of hoorah and positive and cheering people up, but if that's all you do and you never talk about the struggles and the dark side of business, I want to call it, then I think people get caught off guard when the reality of the leadership gravity hits them. So I think first step is vulnerability and really being honest with your team and honest with those who are coming up. And then it's just having one-to-one conversations with your team on a regular basis.
At the great companies, Microsoft and Apple, and there was always someone that we know of, a Bill Gates, a Steve Jobs, but there was someone behind the scenes that we don't necessarily know their names. Like
it happen.
Johnny Ivey or Steve Ballmer that were making stuff happen and making a lot of stuff that didn't need to happen. Like, okay, let's just put that in the parking lot for now.
I will say too, in kind of the disruptive thing, I think it's so important. I think in family businesses, a lot of times this is the way it's been done. We can't disrupt it. Right. We got to just keep this way. But it is a different mindset of thinking, if we don't change, this is not going to be here in the long run.
Right.
That we're here for the long term. So you need to be thinking. I mean, the world is completely different. So if you don't have someone that's thinking farther out than right now, you're not going to exist in the next few years. At least that's my humble opinion.
And governance is such a heavy word. For the longest time, when I would hear about governance, I was just like, do we really have to? This sounds incredibly boring. This sounds like a distraction from making money.
Bureaucratic, almost. It's like we're going to turn this corporation from an entrepreneurial company to a bureaucracy. Ugh.
This is it. And I think every entrepreneur hates the concept of slowing down the business with paperwork and process. Ugh, what's that? Want to go after the opportunity.
Right.
But I think it took me a while, and I had to reframe my mind to see that it wasn't about bureaucracy. It was about creating a process through which collective decision-making could be made with the family, a platform through which we could have considered conversations about what is all of this about? Where are we heading? Like you were kind of alluding to with the corridor.
Theory of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, like families have decision overload. There's so many possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many industries you can go into, but how do you distill the opportunities that are right for you?
It was the one person doing too many things.
Yeah.
And that's not even realizing how much she was doing.
Yeah.
And making yourself unhealthy.
Yeah.
In the process. And so some people just pick that up and just do it. And it sometimes takes a little while to figure out what they're doing. And then when you start hiring to replace that person, you're kind of like, holy cow, what was she doing? And how much of it was necessary? And not that it wasn't necessary at the time, but as you evolve with different people, things change. And if you're still doing the same things you were doing 6 months or a year ago, they may not be necessary today. So it's a constant evaluation of, are we being as productive as we can in creating the highest customer experience?
Show them that you respect what they do and their contributions that got the business to that point at the time, that 95, 96 years, now we're in year 111. So those three sort of themes of generate sales to establish your credibility, learn the business cold so people respect your knowledge of the organization, and 3, act with humility. Those helped me enter the business in a very smooth and successful way.
I love the humility piece because Pat Lencioni talks about in his book, The Ideal Team Player, the 3 attributes of any ideal team player is someone who's humble, hungry, and smart, like emotionally smart. And you gentlemen both seem to embrace all 3. Nobody wants to see entitled young brats coming up through the business, going back to the Succession sort of HBO miniseries. Nobody wants to see that.
It's okay to want to make money and putting in times money first. Well, I want to kind of give back too. And it's like, no, you can do both, but you need to have a sustainable business model in order to do both. So don't lose track of getting that business model right. And you can do well and do good at the same time. And that's very important. That's a philosophy that we have at Camino Financial. And yes, we want to build generational wealth in underserved communities. Now, we are committed to these underserved communities. The largest and fastest growing underbanked segment in the world is the US-based Latinx segment. If you had to aggregate the US Latinx GDP, they would generate $2.6 trillion in GDP per year and growing faster than India and China. So that's like, and by the way, just to put 2.6 trillion in context, that would be the 8th largest economy in the world, larger than Brazil and twice the size of Mexico.
Unbelievable.
Another lesson learned, if you tell the kids, go out and do what you want to do, and then you can come back in the business, well, they may go out and find out what they like to do is what they like to do and not come back in the business. So without hopefully pushing him, the opportunity was always available for him if he wanted to come into the business. And part of that was, if you're going to come into the business after a certain time, chances of you stepping up and running the business, succeeding me, are probably not going to be the case. So He knew that part coming in, and where his role was going to be over the next 5 or 6 years would be a senior management role based on his abilities, but probably not going to succeed me unless something crazy happens. So we had that conversation.
Yeah.
So he walked in with open eyes about that, I believe.
Guidance counselors for a very long time, several decades,
weren't allowed to speak to students about any other options besides four-year college. Mm-hmm. And that has created a situation where we no longer have apprenticeship programs, we no longer have shop classes in high schools, and our youth doesn't understand the power of and the earning power included in a career in the trades. So, you know, it's the workforce shortage is real. It is definitely something that we have tried a lot of different things to recruit and retain employees, and those have ranged the gamut. Some of the things that have worked the best for me is vacation time, paid time off, and it's interesting that if you speak to people who are employed by subcontractors or who are subcontractors themselves, that's often not a benefit that's offered. They just don't do that, and so that's kind of helped set us apart.
It's a fine line to walk,
right?
Because I never want to come across as inauthentic, because we're out there to do something good. Right. Now, if it can benefit myself, if it can benefit other people, that's great.
Yep.
But I'm trying to put someone else in charge of that, where it's not just me. But I will tell you that when you come to someone and say, "Hi, my name's Craig and I own this painting company and we'd like to do something for you," they're like, "Okay, there's a million painters out here. Thank you, appreciate it." When I come to somebody and say, "Hi, I'm with the Building Arts Foundation. We're trying to find a wall to put a mural on."
Right.
How do I get involved?
Right.
You know, it's a whole different thing, and I love it because it's not a hard line thing. It's something willing. People are willing. They go along with it.
I was at a conference, and I swear I don't remember the speaker's name, and it's the only thing I remember from the conference. The speaker said, "Your only moral imperative is to be who you needed when you were younger." And it hit me. It sat on my shoulders for 2 years. And I finally said, you know, the person that I need to be is evident, and I try to be that person today. But what I really needed when I took that job on February the 15th was some sort of guide to figure out what I was supposed to do, because the CEO's position is the only one in the organization without a job description.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
It's the catch-all position. It's the Harry Truman, the buck stops here mentality, which we have perverted down into you know, an unlimited to-do list for the guy at the top of the organization.
Checking, you know, ego gets really triggered when we get put into question, or when we feel challenged, or when we feel threatened. Our ego is the first thing to come to our defense, and that's never a good place to be when you're dealing with family, at least from what I found. So getting through my own stuff was really important, so that I wasn't putting my stuff on my family. So the healthier that I became and the clearer that I got, the more that I could see kind of like how our family dynamics were at play. And so I did a lot of work on myself. I did a lot of therapy. I did a lot of trainings. I just kind of did everything I could to get right with me, because I can't force anyone to go into therapy. I can't force my family to want to get better, but I can become the best version of myself that I can be. And I can be and get myself to be as level-headed and as clear with what I'm here to accomplish, that it's not a personal, when I'm at work, it's not a personal gain I'm going after, it's for the business.
We're here to put back in the bucket. And is that obvious what that means? It means, you know, you've been given a lot, put back. And I remember once I'm not sure how old I was, but maybe 8 or 10 or something, and I come into my father's study, and it's a Saturday, and he's just surrounded with all these books and papers and things, and I ask him what he's doing, and he explains that he's evaluating charities that he's going to support. And I said, you know, why are you doing that? You could be out playing golf or something. And he said words that I'll just absolutely never forget, and that have influenced me the rest of my life, and that I think I've seen apply to Frank Perdue as well, and it's this. He said, the greatest pleasure my money has ever given me is in giving it away.
Wow.
Is that not powerful?
Yeah, it's so powerful.
This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Thank you for joining us on the Disruptive Successor podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, review, and share with a friend who would benefit from the message. If you're interested in picking up a copy of my book, Disruptive Successor, go to disruptivesuccessor.com.